Did you ever think the person pouring your one glass of wine every night is actually counting down your final days? I once believed my marriage was an impenetrable fortress. That was until I collapsed on the floor of the most luxurious restaurant in Austin. Faintly hearing my heartbeat slow down, I realized my husband's panicked smile was nothing but one deadly performance. Hello, wonderful listeners of Violet Revenge Stories. Our channel was recently demonetized by YouTube, leaving us without the budget to keep operating. If you enjoyed today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking team to survive and keep creating for you. You can donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on the screen or by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment. My name is Harper Chapman. I am 35 years old, and I work as a lead software engineer developing a groundbreaking artificial intelligence algorithm at Aero Vanguard Solutions, right here in Austin, Texas. For years, my life was nothing but code, late nights, and the unwavering pursuit of perfection. We were exactly 6 months away from our highly anticipated initial public offering, a monumental milestone that was supposed to make all the grueling hours worth it. But instead of feeling the rush of imminent success, my body started deteriorating. It began subtly. First, there were the severe, blinding headaches that would strike without warning, making the monitor screens feel like glaring suns. Then came the brain fog, a thick, unexplainable mental haze that left me struggling to recall simple lines of code or the names of my own colleagues. I attributed it to stress, the immense pressure of the upcoming launch weighing heavily on my shoulders. My charming, devoted husband, Nolan, was my absolute rock during this difficult time. He was always so attentive, stepping up to take care of me when I could barely drag myself out of bed. "Let me help you heal, sweetheart," he would say, his voice thick with concern as he brushed my hair back. Every single morning, without fail, he would blend a special health smoothie for me. He claimed it was packed with antioxidants, vitamins, and rare superfoods he had researched meticulously just to help me recover my strength. I drank every last drop, leaning into his affection, truly believing I was the luckiest woman alive to have a partner who cared so deeply. Concurrently, there was a strange, mounting pressure from another corner of my life. Chloe, our joint wealth manager and someone I considered a close family friend, became increasingly persistent. She would call me constantly, pushing me to sign an emergency medical power of attorney. "Harper, you are the primary breadwinner, and with your health being so unpredictable lately, we urgently need to protect the family assets," she urged during one of her unannounced visits to our home. "It is just a precaution, purely standard procedure for someone holding your level of corporate equity." Her tone was always strictly professional, yet there was a sharp, underlying urgency that made the back of my neck prickle. I kept brushing it off, telling her we could handle the paperwork after the public offering, but she simply would not let it go. The fragile illusion of my perfect life shattered completely on a mundane Tuesday evening. Nolan was taking a shower, and I was rummaging around looking for my wireless earpods. I reached deep into the side pocket of his leather gym bag, expecting to feel the familiar plastic case. Instead, my fingers brushed against something cold, cheap, and unfamiliar. I pulled it out. It was a disposable burner phone. Nolan was a man who obsessed over the latest luxury technology. There was absolutely no logical reason for him to own a plastic prepaid brick. My heart hammered wildly against my ribs as I pressed the poor button. It was not password protected. I opened the messaging application with trembling hands. There was only one contact saved in the device, simply labeled with a single initial. The thread was full of cryptic exchanges, but the most recent messages were terrifyingly clear. "Increase the dosage to 15 milligrams. One text read, "She is barely drinking it all. The chemical is too bitter. Add more berries to mask it." Another replied. A sickening wave of nausea washed over me. The room spun, not from my mysterious illness, but from the crushing weight of absolute betrayal. The smoothies, the relentless push for the power of attorney, my rapidly failing health. It all suddenly aligned into one horrifying picture. I did not confront him. I did not scream or cry. Survival instincts, sharp and primal, took over my mind. The very next morning, I watched him pour the thick purple liquid into my glass. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and waited for him to turn his back to wash the blender. I swiftly poured the contents into a sterile travel flask. Instead of going to our trusted family doctor, I drove straight to an independent private laboratory on the outskirts of the city. I handed them the flask and a sample of my own blood, paying entirely in cash. I needed the undeniable truth, no matter how much it was going to destroy me. 72 agonizing hours passed before the private laboratory called me back. Sitting across from the lead toxicologist in a sterile, windowless office, the remaining fragments of my marriage were violently obliterated. The doctor slid a thick manila folder across the desk, his expression tight with grim professional concern. "You are not experiencing an organic illness," he stated flatly, tapping the paper. "You are being poisoned." The blood work and the smoothie residue were a perfect match. Someone was deliberately feeding me a highly sophisticated, slow-acting mixture of rare neuroinhibitory chemicals. The toxin was meticulously designed to mimic the exact symptoms of rapid cognitive decline, effectively destroying my central nervous system while leaving virtually no trace in standard hospital blood screenings. I expected to break down in that sterile room. I expected to scream or weep for the man I thought I loved with my entire being. Instead, a terrifying, absolute clarity washed over me. The burning rage in my chest instantly calcified into pure, freezing ice. I walked out of that clinic not as a heartbroken victim, but as a woman marching to war. I immediately hired a veteran private investigator, an ex-military operative who specialized in deep-cover corporate espionage. I paid him a retainer of $50,000 in untraceable cash. His strict instructions were simple yet absolute. Monitor every single movement, phone call, and digital transaction my husband made, 24 hours a day. It took the investigator less than 5 days to deliver the ironclad proof. We met in a dimly lit diner on the edge of the city limits, where he handed me a heavy envelope filled with high-resolution photographs and heavily encrypted financial documents. My husband, the man who tenderly kissed my forehead every morning, was deeply entangled in a passionate, illicit affair with Chloe. The glossy pictures showed them tangled together on the balcony of a luxury hotel, laughing and drinking champagne while I was at home struggling to put together coherent sentences. But the betrayal was far deeper than mere physical infidelity. The documents proved they had recently finalized the secret purchase of a $4 million beachfront villa in Costa Rica, registered seamlessly under a complex web of offshore shell companies. The financial records painted an even more grotesque picture of the man sleeping next to me. Nolan was completely and utterly ruined. Beneath his impeccably tailored suits and the leasing of expensive sports cars, he had secretly accumulated over $12 million in staggering debt. This massive liability stemmed from a series of disastrous, underground commercial real estate investments that had gone completely bankrupt. He was drowning in financial ruin, with ruthless creditors closing in on him from every conceivable angle. Suddenly, the entire dark architecture of their plot illuminated in my mind. Their end goal was never just my physical death. A sudden, unexplained death would automatically trigger a messy police investigation and freeze all of my corporate assets indefinitely. Their objective was much more sinister. They intended to render me entirely incapacitated, effectively turning me into a living, breathing vegetable. Once I was medically declared incompetent, Chloe would execute that emergency power of attorney she had been ruthlessly pushing me to sign. With full legal and financial control over my estate, Nolan would bypass the board of directors and secretly sell my life's work, the artificial intelligence algorithm, to our biggest rival tech corporation for hundreds of millions of dollars. They would clear his massive debts, flee the country with their stolen fortune, and leave me rotting in a long-term care facility until my body finally gave out. I was sharing a house, a life, and a bed with a monster. The realization was physically sickening. Yet it sharpened my focus to a razor edge. Any ordinary person would have immediately gone to the authorities or confronted him with the damning evidence scattered across the diner table. But exposing them now would only lead to messy corporate litigation and give them a desperate chance to destroy the remaining evidence. They wanted to play a high-stakes game of deception, and I was going to show them exactly why I was the mastermind behind the most advanced predictive software in the entire industry. I made the deliberate, chilling decision to keep my cards completely hidden. When I returned home that evening, I let my shoulders slump. I forced my hands to tremble slightly as I reached for the front door handle. I stepped inside the foyer, greeting Nolan with a weak, exhausted smile, perfectly continuing my role as the fragile, ailing wife. He rushed over to support my weight, feigning absolute devotion. Let them think they were winning. Let them believe I was fading away into nothingness. I was going to construct a flawless trap, and I would not stop until they had both walked right into their own absolute destruction. The first phase of my retaliation required absolute legal precision and utter secrecy. I could not rely on our usual corporate counsel, so I arranged a clandestine meeting with Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a corporate attorney renowned throughout Texas for his ruthless cunning, aggressive tactics, and borderline unethical brilliance. We met in a sterile, soundproof conference room well past midnight, far away from the city center. I slid a heavy briefcase across the polished mahogany table, containing a retainer fee of $150,000 in untraceable cash. My instructions to him were uncompromising. He was to completely tear down and rebuild the entire legal architecture of my company from the ground up, over the course of 3 agonizingly long weeks. Utilizing my unilateral authority as the founding director, we executed a brilliant phantom restructuring. I systematically and permanently transferred the complete intellectual property rights, the foundational source code, and all future licensing revenues of my true artificial intelligence algorithm into an impenetrable, blind trust. This trust was fortified by a labyrinth of international legal barriers, nested within sovereign jurisdictions so complex that even a massive army of corporate litigators would spend decades trying to unravel a single thread. The real asset, the culmination of my life's work, was now completely untouchable by anyone on Earth except me. With the genuine code heavily secured, I needed to give my husband exactly what he was desperately looking for. Late at night, while Nolan was deeply asleep, dreaming of his impending stolen fortune, I sat in the darkness of my home office constructing a magnificent masterpiece of digital deception. I spent 72 consecutive hours programming a massive decoy version of the algorithm. On the surface, the user interface, the data visualization dashboards, and the initial processing speeds looked exactly like my revolutionary work. It was a perfect aesthetic clone. However, buried incredibly deep within the core mathematical architecture, I planted massive, cascading logic bombs and catastrophic security vulnerabilities. Once deployed on any large scale or integrated into a foreign system, the software would not just fail, it would completely corrupt, encrypt, and destroy any host server it touched. I deliberately placed this poisoned code onto the specific local network drive I knew Nolan secretly accessed when he thought I was medicated. I even left a subtle breadcrumb trail of easily cracked administrative passwords, making him feel like a masterful spy discovering a hidden treasure. The digital trap was perfectly set, but I needed undeniable, high-definition physical evidence of his daily crimes to ensure his ultimate destruction. Utilizing the intricate hardware engineering skills I had perfected in my early 20s, I purchased military-grade micro-surveillance equipment from a specialized security vendor. During the 4 hours Nolan spent at his luxury athletic club every Sunday morning, I carefully unscrewed the brushed steel ventilation grates directly above our custom marble kitchen island. I meticulously embedded 3 pinhole cameras, perfectly angled to capture the primary food preparation area, the sink, and the heavy-duty blender station. The video and audio feeds were routed straight to a secure, heavily encrypted cloud server that required biometric authentication to access. Watching the live feed for the first time was a surreal, chilling experience that froze the blood in my veins. I saw my husband, whistling a cheerful, upbeat tune, casually tapping a measured vial of synthetic neuroinhibitory poison into my morning meal. Having the crystal clear footage of his casual, daily attempts at murder secured in the cloud gave me a dark, twisted, and intoxicating sense of absolute power. But all of this power meant absolutely nothing if my physical body failed before the grand endgame. I immediately reconnected with the brilliant independent toxicologist who had originally diagnosed my poisoning, working strictly off the books for an additional fee of $75,000. He formulated a rigorous, personalized antidote regimen designed to violently flush the toxins from my system. Every single afternoon, during my supposed mandated nap time, I would lock myself inside the master bathroom. I would turn the shower on to the highest setting to muffle any sound, grit my teeth, and inject the thick, neutralizing compounds directly into the muscle of my thigh. The counteragents were incredibly harsh, leaving me violently nauseous, sweating, and aching for hours, but they ruthlessly purged the poison from my bloodstream. Internally, my central nervous system was rapidly healing, my cognitive functions returned, and my mind became sharper than it had been in over 18 months. Externally, however, I doubled down on my tragic performance. I applied pale, sickly foundation under my eyes, deliberately stumbled over expensive area rugs, and intentionally slurred my words during dinner conversations. I was an award-winning actress performing flawlessly on the terrifying stage of my own impending murder. The crucial pillar of my defensive fortress involved ensuring that when the dust finally settled, my betrayers would be left with absolutely nothing. While Chloe smugly believed she was meticulously maneuvering my wealth toward her and Nolan, she vastly underestimated my intimate understanding of our corporate financial bylaws. I quietly initiated a series of legally binding, irrevocable wealth transfers. I ruthlessly funneled 95% of my liquid cash, my lucrative stock options, and my personal commercial real estate holdings into a complex series of dummy corporations and untouchable offshore accounts. I mirrored the exact same financial trickery they had used for their Costa Rican villa, but I executed it with a level of sophistication that made their efforts look like child's play. On paper, the joint banking applications Nolan checked obsessively every day still showed millions of dollars in available funds. However, those figures were nothing more than a beautiful mirage. Automated ghost balances generated by a custom script I had written to feed his phone false data. He was staring at a completely empty vault. They truly thought they had backed a helpless woman into a corner, completely unaware that I had already sealed all the doors and was quietly, systematically draining every last ounce of oxygen from the room. The invitation came on a Thursday afternoon. Nolan walked into the living room holding a velvet-lined reservation card for L'Etoile, widely known as the most exclusive, fiercely expensive, and opulent French dining establishment in all of Austin. Getting a table there required a waiting list of at least 6 months. "We are going out to celebrate, my love," he announced, his voice practically dripping with artificial warmth. "You are just days away from completing the biggest project of your entire career. You deserve to be treated like an absolute queen tonight." I looked at his handsome, smiling face, recognizing the hollow glint in his eyes. I knew exactly what this was. This was not a celebration. This was the grand finale. The timeline of their Costa Rican real estate purchase and the looming corporate launch meant they were out of time. Tonight was the night they planned to administer the lethal strike, a massive, concentrated overdose of the neuroinhibitor designed to completely shut down my motor functions and force an emergency hospitalization. They needed me in a permanent vegetative state by tomorrow morning. My preparation for the evening was a ritual of cold sans-dish, calculated survival. At exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, while Nolan was busy picking out his most expensive tailored suit in the master bedroom, I locked myself inside the guest bathroom. I retrieved a small, reinforced metal lockbox hidden behind the vanity mirror. Inside lay a single, heavy-duty syringe, pre-filled with a thick, amber liquid. It was a severe, high-dosage, preemptive synthetic antidote. synthesized personally by my toxicologist specifically for this exact scenario. He had warned me that injecting it would be excruciating. He was not exaggerating. As I pushed the plunger, driving the fluid deep into my thigh muscle, a wave of sheer, blinding agony shot up my spine. My skin burned as if I had been injected with liquid fire, and my heart hammered aggressively against my ribcage. I bit down hard on a rolled-up towel to muffle my groans. For 20 agonizing minutes, I sat on the cold tile floor, waiting for the violent chemical storm inside my veins to stabilize. When I finally stood up, I was practically vibrating with synthetic adrenaline. My central nervous system was now an impenetrable fortress, heavily fortified and ready to neutralize any toxin introduced into my digestive tract. I carefully applied a layer of pale makeup, intentionally emphasizing the dark circles under my eyes, and slipped into a sleek, dark emerald evening gown that hung slightly loose on my frame to accentuate my supposed frailty. When we arrived at the restaurant shortly after 8 o'clock, the atmosphere was suffocatingly romantic. The grand dining room was bathed in the soft, flickering golden glow of hundreds of crystal-encased candles. A string quartet played a melancholic, beautiful classical piece in the corner. Nolan held my hand tightly as the maitre d' escorted us to a secluded, intimate corner booth draped in heavy velvet curtains. Throughout the first 2 courses, Nolan delivered an absolutely Oscar-worthy performance. He continuously reached across the white linen tablecloth to stroke my knuckles, pouring out honeyed words of devotion. "I am so incredibly proud of you, Harper," he whispered, staring deeply into my eyes with a look of pure, fabricated adoration. "You have pushed through so much physical pain to finish this software. After tonight, I am taking over. You are going to rest, and I am going to take care of absolutely everything for us." I forced my eyes to well up with tears, allowing a soft, vulnerable smile to tremble on my lips. "Thank you, darling," I replied softly, my voice barely above a fragile whisper. "I honestly do not know what I would ever do without you." The bitter irony of my words tasted metallic on my tongue. As the waiter cleared our appetizer plates, I knew the window of opportunity was closing. "Excuse me for just a moment, sweetheart," I murmured, clutching my small clutch purse to my chest. "I need to visit the ladies' room to fix my lipstick." I stood up slowly, feigning a slight wobble, and allowed Nolan to steady my waist with his hand. I walked away, but I did not go to the restroom. Instead, I slipped behind a large marble pillar near the entrance of the wine cellar, giving me a perfectly unobstructed view of our table through a reflection in a decorative antique mirror. I watched him. The second he believed I was out of sight, the facade of the loving husband instantly vanished. His posture stiffened. His eyes darted nervously around the dining room. With lightning speed, his hand slipped into his suit pocket. He pulled out a small, translucent, dissolvable capsule. In one smooth, practiced motion, he held his hand over my crystal goblet of expensive red wine and dropped the pill directly into the dark, ruby liquid. It vanished instantly, dissolving without a single trace. A cold, victorious smirk flashed briefly across his face before he leaned back, adjusting his silk tie and returning to his relaxed, charming posture. I waited exactly 3 minutes before returning to the table. I glided back into my seat, offering him another weak, grateful smile. The waiter approached, seamlessly pouring a fresh glass of water, but my focus was entirely on the wine. Nolan raised his own glass, the crystal catching the candlelight. "To us, Harper," he said smoothly. "To your brilliant mind, and to our beautiful, long future together." I picked up my poisoned goblet. The glass felt heavy, loaded with the weight of his profound betrayal and my impending vengeance. I looked directly into his lying eyes. I did not break eye contact. "To our future, Nolan," I echoed smoothly. "May we both get exactly what we deserve." Without a single fraction of hesitation, I brought the rim to my lips and drank deeply. The wine was rich and earthy, but beneath the complex flavor profile of the grapes, I could taste the faint, unmistakable bitterness of the concentrated chemical compound. I swallowed every last drop, placing the empty glass back onto the table with a soft clink. Now, the terrifying waiting game began. I sat there, meticulously eating my roasted duck, calculating the exact metabolic rate of the drug. I knew the toxin usually took about 20 to 30 minutes to breach the blood-brain barrier. Thanks to my preemptive antidote, the poison was already being violently neutralized in my stomach lining, rendering it completely harmless. But I had to flawlessly simulate its devastating effects. Precisely 28 minutes after the toast, I initiated the performance of a lifetime. Mid-sentence, I let my fork slip from my fingers. It clattered loudly against the expensive porcelain plate. I abruptly stopped speaking, letting my jaw hang slightly slack. I brought a trembling hand to my throat, forcing my breathing to become shallow, rapid, and strained. "Nolan!" I gasped out, my voice thick with manufactured panic. "Something is wrong. The room is spinning." I blinked rapidly, rolling my eyes back slightly to mimic severe neurological distress. Nolan immediately sprang up from his chair, his face a perfect mask of sheer terror. "Harper! Oh my God! Someone help!" he screamed, his voice echoing loudly across the hushed dining room. I let my upper body sway violently, sweeping my arm across the table and shattering 2 wine glasses. With a final, choked gasp, I let my muscles go entirely limp and collapsed dramatically from the chair. I hit the polished hardwood floor of the restaurant with a heavy, sickening thud. As I lay there, surrounded by the chaotic sounds of screaming patrons and rushing waiters, I kept my eyes closed, entirely paralyzed, while the man who tried to murder me desperately performed his grief for the audience. The harsh, rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor was the first sound that pierced my consciousness. I lay perfectly still on the stiff mattress of a private, heavily isolated hospital suite. The air was sterile, thick with the sharp scent of clinical antiseptic and bleached linens. I kept my eyelids firmly shut, completely relaxing my facial muscles to project the slack, lifeless expression of a woman trapped in a deep, irreversible coma. Every inhalation and exhalation was a masterclass in physical control. I forced my chest to rise and fall at an agonizingly slow, rhythmic pace, mimicking the exact respiratory depression caused by a massive neurological shutdown. I was fully awake, my mind buzzing with crystal clarity thanks to the antidote coursing through my veins. But to the outside world, Harper Chapman was already a ghost. The heavy mahogany door clicked open with a soft, metallic thud. 2 sets of footsteps entered the quiet room. I instantly recognized the heavy, confident tread of my husband's expensive leather loafers, closely followed by the sharp, rhythmic clicking of Chloe's designer heels. The door clicked shut, sealing us inside. The moment the latch engaged, the suffocating atmosphere of feigned tragedy instantly evaporated. A low, triumphant chuckle vibrated in Nolan's throat. "I honestly cannot believe how perfectly that went," Nolan murmured, his voice completely devoid of the hysterical panic he had performed at the restaurant just hours ago. He sounded energized, practically buzzing with adrenaline. "She went down exactly on schedule. The paramedics said her pupils were completely unresponsive by the time they loaded her into the ambulance. I told you the dosage adjustment would do the trick," Chloe replied, her tone dripping with smug satisfaction. I heard the unmistakable rustle of thick paper as she presumably opened her designer briefcase. "The attending physician is already on our payroll. He is drafting the preliminary assessment as we speak. By tomorrow morning, she will be officially declared mentally incapacitated and unfit to manage her own affairs." I felt a sudden shift in the air pressure near my bed. Nolan was standing right beside me. I could smell the faint trace of his musky cologne mingling with the sickeningly sweet aroma of Chloe's perfume. He leaned over, his breath brushing against my cheek. I maintained my shallow breathing, not allowing a single muscle fiber to twitch. "Look at her," Nolan sneered softly, a cold edge of contempt slicing through his words. "The great genius of Austin, the brilliant engineer who thought she was untouchable, all that intelligence, and she drank that smoothie every single morning like an obedient little dog. She practically begged me to take care of her. Chloe laughed, a sharp, grating sound that echoed off the sterile walls. Her naive trust is what just made us incredibly wealthy. Darling, I have the emergency medical power of attorney and the asset transfer contracts right here. The second the doctor signs the declaration of incompetency, I will execute the power of attorney. You will have full legal authority to bypass the board of directors. And then we sell, Nolan stated, the greed radiating from his voice. I checked the private server access right before we went to dinner. The entire source code for the artificial intelligence algorithm is sitting right there in the unsecured directory. She was so disorganized at the end. She practically wrapped it in a bow for us. That fake code is our golden key to billions of dollars. We will close the deal with the rival tech conglomerate by noon, clear my debts, and be on a private jet to Costa Rica before the weekend. They stood over my supposed living corpse, openly mocking my life, my work, and my love, completely intoxicated by their own perceived brilliance. They truly believed they had conquered me. They had no idea they were holding a digital hand grenade with the pin already pulled. Let us go down to the administrative wing and finalize the paperwork with the doctor, Chloe urged, her footsteps moving toward the door. I do not want to leave anything to chance. We need those signatures right now. Sweet dreams, Harper, Nolan whispered mockingly. I heard him turn on his heel and walk away. The heavy door opened and closed, plunging the room back into the rhythmic, solitary beeping of the monitors. I waited exactly 60 seconds to ensure the hallway was clear. Then, I opened my eyes. There was no fear left in me. There was no sorrow. My expression hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated resolve. The time for hiding was officially over. I reached under the thick hospital mattress, my fingers closing around the cold metal of a secure, prepaid smartphone my private security team had planted hours before my arrival. I unlocked the screen and opened a secure messaging application. I typed a single, decisive command to Marcus Thorne, my ruthless corporate attorney who was waiting on standby. Execute the freeze! Burn them down! I hit send. The trap was sprung. I quickly ripped the harmless, unattached monitor pads off my chest and arms, silencing the machine with a press of a button. Slipping out of the uncomfortable hospital gown, I moved swiftly to the adjoining private bathroom where a discreet duffel bag had been left for me. I dressed rapidly in a sharp, tailored black suit. I stepped out of the bathroom, bypassed the main hallway, and opened the secondary emergency exit door located at the back of the VIP suite. Two massive, heavily armed men from my private security detail were waiting in the dimly lit service corridor, exactly as we had planned. Car is waiting, Ms. Chapman, the lead guard stated respectfully. I nodded, walking past him without a single backward glance at the empty hospital bed. I was leaving the victim behind forever. Tomorrow, I would watch the predators walk right into their own slaughter. At exactly 9 o'clock the following morning, the brilliant Texas sun reflected off the towering glass facade of the corporate headquarters belonging to our biggest industry rival. Up on the 45th floor, inside a sleek, transparent glass boardroom overlooking the sprawling city skyline, Nolan and Chloe sat with entirely unearned confidence. They were dressed in impeccable designer clothing, radiating the arrogant energy of two people who firmly believed they had just successfully stolen the world. Across the polished marble table sat the rival conglomerate's chief executive officer and his legal team, eager to get their hands on my supposedly stolen life's work. Nolan smiled warmly, playing the role of the grieving but pragmatic husband to absolute perfection. He reached into his tailored suit jacket and proudly placed a heavy, encrypted silver hard drive onto the center of the table. As my wife's legally appointed proxy, I am fully authorized to execute this transfer, Nolan stated smoothly, sliding the drive toward the rival director. You will find the complete, unredacted source code right here. Once the transfer of $500 million hits the designated offshore routing numbers, the decryption key is all yours. The rival director nodded eagerly. He picked up the drive, plugged it directly into the master terminal of their secured corporate network, and typed in the activation code Nolan provided. The massive digital display covering the far wall of the boardroom lit up, showing a progress bar as the system prepared to unpack the algorithm. 10%, 40%, 80%. Nolan and Chloe exchanged a deeply satisfied, victorious glance. They were mere seconds away from unimaginable wealth. 99%. Suddenly, a piercing, high-pitched alarm violently shattered the quiet professionalism of the boardroom. The entire master terminal sparked and violently shut down. Every single light in the room flickered ominously before the massive display screen abruptly flashed a blinding blood-red color. A loud, computerized voice echoed through the ceiling speakers, accompanied by text in massive, bold lettering across the monitor. Critical system failure. Unauthorized host detected. Initiating total data purge. Federal copyright violation protocol engaged. The decoy algorithm was doing exactly what I designed it to do, rapidly destroying the rival company's local servers and locking them entirely out of their own mainframe. So, before anyone inside the room could even comprehend the digital catastrophe unfolding before their eyes, the heavy double doors of the boardroom burst open with a deafening crash. I strode into the room, my head held high, radiating absolute, undeniable authority. I was not the pale, trembling, dying woman they had left in that hospital bed just 12 hours prior. I wore a razor-sharp, tailored crimson power suit, my posture perfect, my eyes blazing with a cold, terrifying fire. I was flanked immediately by Marcus Thorne, my ruthless corporate attorney, and a squad of 6 heavily armed federal agents wearing dark, tactical windbreakers. The color instantly drained from Nolan's face. He stumbled backward, his expensive leather chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. His mouth opened and closed silently, like a suffocating fish. Chloe gasped, dropping her designer pen, her hands trembling violently as she stared at me as if looking at a resurrected demon. "Looking for something, darling?" I asked, my voice echoing off the glass walls, completely devoid of any warmth or mercy. "Harper," Nolan choked out, his voice a pathetic, high-pitched wheeze. "How are you awake? You were in a coma. The doctor said you were gone." "The doctor you bribed is currently sitting in a federal interrogation room singing like a canary," I replied sharply, not breaking my piercing eye contact with him. I gestured smoothly to the federal agent beside me. "Show them." The agent plugged a secure tablet into the secondary presentation system. Instantly, the boardroom screen switched from the red warning signs to crystal clear, high-definition video footage. Everyone in the room, including the deeply horrified rival executives, watched in stunned silence as the video showed Nolan casually standing in my kitchen, whistling a cheerful tune while emptying a vial of synthetic neuroinhibitory poison into my morning smoothie. Before Nolan could even attempt to formulate a lie, the video transitioned to a black screen, and crisp, perfectly captured audio filled the room. It was the recording from the VIP hospital suite. Nolan's own arrogant voice blasted through the speakers, bragging about how my naive trust made them rich, while Chloe gleefully discussed executing the fraudulent power of attorney. The silence that followed was absolute and suffocating. The rival executives aggressively pushed their chairs away from the table, physically distancing themselves from the 2 radioactive criminals they had almost conducted business with. "You completely underestimated me, Nolan," I stated, stepping closer to him, allowing him to see the profound depth of my hatred. "You thought you could poison my body, steal my company, and leave me to rot, but you only succeeded in walking blindly into a trap I built specifically for you. That hard drive you just tried to sell is utterly worthless, completely loaded with catastrophic malware. The real algorithm has been permanently legally secured in an impenetrable blind trust for over a month." Nolan fell to his knees, the devastating realization of his complete ruin finally crashing down upon him. He had no money, no stolen technology, and $12 million in underground debt waiting for him. Chloe began sobbing hysterically, burying her face in her hands as the sheer weight of her impending destruction took hold. Arrest them both, I commanded quietly. The federal agents swiftly moved forward. The heavy metallic click of handcuffs snapping tightly around their wrists was the most beautiful symphony I had ever heard. An agent read them their rights in a stern, booming voice, officially charging them with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, gross financial fraud, and corporate economic espionage. The security team aggressively hauled them out of the boardroom. They were dragged through the crowded corporate lobby in front of hundreds of staring employees, their reputations, their freedom, and their entire futures completely annihilated. They would be held in federal custody entirely without bail, destined to spend the rest of their miserable lives rotting in a cold, concrete cell, drowning in the dark abyss of their own making. I took a deep, cleansing breath, looking out through the massive glass windows at the vibrant city below. The storm was finally over. I turned around and walked out of the building, returning to Aero Vanguard Solutions to reclaim my rightful throne, ready to lead my company into a brilliant, triumphant future, standing proudly and entirely untouchable at the absolute peak of my career. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I would love to know, where in the world are you listening from right now? Please let me know in the comments. As a reminder, our channel is currently operating without any ad revenue. If you found today's story entertaining and satisfying, please consider helping us with just $1. You can easily scan the PayPal QR code on your screen, or click the PayPal link in the description or the pinned comment. Your incredible generosity helps pay our hardworking staff so they can feed their families and continue creating these wonderful stories for you. Thank you for your kindness, and stay safe.